Could I have your attention, please? I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome everybody to the McNulty room of the Aspen Institute. You may notice that we're talking about the McNulty room and the McNulty Prize. This is no coincidence. Ann and Kevin McNulty are here with us today. And Ann McNulty, in honor of her great husband, who was a trustee of the Aspen Institute, both donated this to this building, but also created the McNulty Prize. I didn't quite realize the impact, the power, and the emotion that the McNulty Prize for our Global Leaders Network would have until after a year or two, I began to see that it's at the core of what the Aspen Global Leaders Network and all of the leadership entities around the world are about, which is turning thought into action, moving, as Keith Berwick would say, from success to significance, and making, as Peter would say, a dent in the universe. I do know that yesterday when we were talking about fly fishing and making an impact on your community, making an impact on the country, making an impact on the world, I didn't realize Peter's plan extended beyond world domination and now wants the universe. So we're officially changing this McNulty Prize instead of the Global Leaders Network to the Cosmos Leaders Network Prize. But it's really great to have Ann here. Ann has been not only a supporter but an enthusiast, a real fan. Somebody who got it from the very beginning, what this leadership network is about. And I think her late husband would be very proud because each and every one of you who's contributed to projects, created projects, or competed for the McNulty Prize is really carrying on the legacy of John McNulty, who was both a great mentor and somebody who moved from success to significance. So it's my great pleasure to bring up to stage Ann McNulty and her son, Kevin McNulty. Thank you. Kevin is also an intern, I think, right? At the Institute.
Absolutely.
So
Oh, thank you, Walter. That was a really nice, gracious introduction. My son Kevin and I are thrilled to be here today to announce the finalists for this year's John P. McNulty Prize. As Walter mentioned, Kevin is lucky enough to be one of the interns here at the Aspen Institute this summer. So if any of you want any errands run after the lunch, feel free to ask him. All of us, my son Johnny and my daughter Bryn, who couldn't be here today, along with Kevin, have appreciated the chance that this prize gives us to intersect with all of you and with this amazing global Aspen Fellowship, Universal Aspen Fellowship perhaps. Our family believes that the McNulty Prize pays tribute to all of your efforts and the difference that your leadership projects make. Excuse me. And through this prize, we remember with affection and pride my husband. John was the first of 5 children of 2 very determined Irish immigrants who left Donegal for Brooklyn, seeking, as all immigrants do, a better life. Neither of his parents had much education. His dad was a landscaper, and his mother was initially a housekeeper for a Wall Street banker. That made John's going to work on Wall Street later, and ultimately getting the chance to look out from his office onto the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor and onto Ellis Island, where not that many years earlier his parents had arrived. All the more amazing. John was an energetic, exciting, and irascible force of nature who throughout his life looked for ways to solve problems and to create opportunities, and who rejoiced in helping other people to grow, to learn, and to succeed. John was creative and charming, much like my children, with that Irish wit and that occasional Irish temper, very persuasive and practical, and very able to translate thought into action, just to coin a phrase. That's why in the difficult process we have of selecting finalists, our committee looks at creativity, and we look at impact, and we look at scalability and sustainability. But after we go through the detailed analysis of all the projects, we step back and are still really astounded and inspired by all of the projects and all of you. Now, certainly we knew how successful and articulate and good-looking all of you were when you were recruited to the fellowship. Peter, I think I got the criteria right. Yeah. But in this fourth year of giving the McNulty Prize, we're starting to get an ever better sense of what you're really capable of. How tenacious, caring, strategic, and brave you are. From breaking the cycle of poverty in Panama City, to using film to transform grief into understanding and resolution, to providing employment and health care in the Himalayas. And of course, we recognize the power of restoring sight for hundreds of thousands of people across the developing world, Jordan Caslow, soon to be 1 million people, graduating a new generation of enlightened entrepreneurial leaders in Africa, Patrick Awuah, and rethinking the delivery of education in a way that can help children in our poorest areas become stars, John Denner. So I am pleased and proud to present this year's finalists. I think each of us really in our lives want to make a difference.
Hope is something that everybody deserves.
Es alguien que puede mover personas para bien o para mal.
Cool parts, vision, inspiration, and perspiration.
Se tiene que tener una dosis de coraje y otra dosis de locura.
I'm who I am because of the experiences that I've had.
Respect is treating somebody in the way that you would want to be treated yourself.
When I see my students excelling.
Leadership is one of those things where you know it when you see it.
Thank you. So I'd like to invite to the stage the finalists who are here today. And I'd also like to recognize Priwaj, the head of my foundation, who's also the genius behind these films. And so I think it's wonderful.
Inviting the people on stage, right? Yes. I'm not one of them, but I want to say one more thing, if I may. You didn't mention it, but the finalists and the final announcement, I'd love to say. We're going to do something special this year because we kind of always tried to cram it in at the end of a long dinner or whatever. On Wednesday, November 2nd, right before the board meeting of the Aspen Institute in New York City, we're going to have an evening, an hour-long presentation, the film, everything else, to give out the final McNulty Prize. And I really would urge all of you to be there. This is going to be a big night. It'll probably be at the Metropolitan Club or Roosevelt House. I can't remember. It'll be at the Metropolitan Club, which is sort of Central Park South and Fifth Avenue, that big pile. And we're going to try to have people from around the globe who are part of the Aspen Institutes around the world. But I want each and every one of you to feel invited, because we are going to try to make this an important evening. So Wednesday, November 2nd, Metropolitan Club, Grand Ballroom, New York City.
That's great. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin. I am an intern here. So I will be around with iced tea later on. But I'm also here to introduce the finalists in more deep descriptions. For supporting the development of a new kind of business for good, by building the systems to support, reward, legitimize, and measure the value of those businesses that are operating at the highest ethical, social, and environmental standards. B-Lab, Jay Cohen-Gilbert, and Andrew Kasoy. For making a commitment to all Denver high school students that finances will not be a factor in stopping them from getting a college degree, and providing not just financial support, but all the resources needed to get into college and succeed there. Denver Scholarship Foundation, Timothy Marquez. For uniting NGOs, the government, and the private sector into a powerful coalition that is helping the unprecedented number of orphans and vulnerable children whose families have been ravaged by the South African AIDS epidemic, and making sure that they all get the care they need. Link, Anne Lamont. For leading the crusade against malnutrition in El Salvador by educating mothers and guaranteeing nutrition to the most at-risk pregnant women and infants. Libras de Amor, Alejandro Poma. Alejandro is not here today, but we congratulate him. For taking a courageous stand by speaking truth to power, remaining incorruptible, and holding elites and governments accountable. Elevating the quality of journalism in Nigeria and Africa overall with a daily newspaper that is also the country's #1 trafficked news site. Next, Dele Olajede.
Okay, so congratulations to all of our finalists. You know, it's such an impressive group. As I said, my husband John embodied curiosity and intensity and leadership. He challenged and cajoled the best from almost everyone who crossed his path. So we are thrilled by the work all of you are doing, and in John's spirit, challenge all of you to do even more. So thanks to all of you for support, and I'd now like to invite Peter Reiling and John Danner to the stage for our panel. Thanks.
We do, Danner. That would be you. Thank you, everybody. By the way, where's Seth Goldman? Where are you? I know you're here somewhere. Yes. I did not. I've just had it whispered to me that it is Andrew Cassoy's birthday. So, Andrew, happy birthday. And Seth, I just wanted to say I can't get the Honest Aid lemonade on the East Coast, but I found it on my table here. I know you're responsible for that. Thank you very much. And I'll do my product placement. Oh, I can't seem to find it in D.C. I'm glad to know that. I'm going to rate it there. Good. So congratulations to everybody, and thank you so much, and April as well. Thank you for all of the work you put into this prize, which we know is a great motivator for all of our fellows and such a great way for us to honor the amazing work that all of you people are doing. And so, again, thank you and congratulations to all. John Danner, you are the winner of last year's John P. McNulty Prize. Those of you who don't know John, he started out in the software business, sold his company in 1999, and then decided he would get more involved in education. Of course, he helped to launch something called Rocket Ship Education. We'll be talking a bit more about that. And of course, John Danner is a member of the Henry Crown Fellowship Program. Dele Olojede, nobody can say Dele's name or think about Dele without smiling. Dele is a member of the Africa Leadership Initiative South Africa. As you've seen, he started a New Generation newspaper in Nigeria. Dele could very well have been up on stage with us last night, and Dele is the only African winner of the Pulitzer Prize, I should point out. Anne Lamont, of course, a member of the Africa Leadership Initiative South Africa, the former CEO of Discovery Channel, and recently started up, really in the wake of your fellowship program, I shouldn't say so recently, started up Link, something we're going to hear more about. Anne, congratulations. Tim Marquez only had this far to travel today on the map, but it took a long time to get here, as it did for so many of you. Once again, apologies for Denver and Aspen travel. But Tim, we're so glad you made this trip here. Tim, the founder of Marquez Energy, and of course, having made this amazing contribution to create the Denver Scholarship Fund. Tim, it's great. I'm glad you can make the trip to be here with us. And J. Cone Gilbert, you may know him as B Corp now, but we used to know him as the head and founder of And One Basketball, a company producing basketball shoes as well as apparel that Jay sold for about, well, I won't say the amount, but he did a good job selling that company, and then decided that he was very passionate about the concept of B corporations. Jay, I remember very well that after your sale, you took a year off with your family and spent some time in Costa Rica and had the chance to visit with our Central American fellows, where I think you were just beginning to formalize this idea of B Corporation. And so, Jay, congratulations. And Jay is a member of the Henry Crown Fellowship Program living in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So, Jay, congratulations. Thank you. So, we have fellows and a few non-fellows in the room here today. And so for the non-fellows, just to explain that one of the key parts of the Aspen Global Leadership Network is we spend a lot of time in small groups and seminars doing a lot of thinking about the kind of society we'd like to live in. But there's an action component. And the action component is that every fellow come up with a project that will stretch them in their leadership, and then they implement the project. And of course, the John P. McNulty Prize was created to help spur on great projects and to support great projects so that they can continue to grow. I know that if we took a look at all the projects that have been produced by our fellows around the world and we had to lay them out on a graph, it's a bell curve, as most things often turn out to be. And very often we find that fellows have a hard time getting their projects off the ground. And so what I wanted to do with my questions this afternoon is explore with you guys how it is you got your projects off the ground, how you've been able to succeed in the way you have, and sort of dig in, especially for those fellows who may even be in the room who are still trying to figure out maybe not just how to launch their projects, but how to take them to scale, how they might be able to have similar success to you. And so that'll be the line of questioning, if that's okay. So when we hand out the criteria for the projects, our number one criteria is you better be passionate about the idea. If you're not passionate about it, we're pretty sure the idea will never get off the ground. John, why don't you start us off? Where did you get the passion for rocket ship education?
Yeah, so the story behind kind of how I got from where I was to education is interesting. So I was in technology, sold a company, was running a couple other companies, not really excited about that. And I was fortunate enough to have gone to a high school for high school. And the Jesuits, as you may know, once you've made money, they are some of the best and finding you, even if your mic fails. And so they asked me to help at Bellarmine, where I went to school, and I said, I'm really not so interested in upper middle class white men. What else do you have going? And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we're kind of victims of our own success. 150 years ago when we started, we were educating Irish and Italian immigrants, and we've done pretty well. And so now we've got this problem that a lot of the people going to our schools are actually quite well-to-do. But we have this opportunity in that there are a lot of cities now with large Latino populations coming from Mexico and South America, and we think that we can do something. So they were starting these middle schools called nativity schools, and they were starting one in San Jose, and so I got involved, and I knew nothing about education. But for those of you that have been involved in education in very low-income areas, it's just amazing to watch the body language of the people in that neighborhood as they realize that their life has gone from not a lot of options and opportunities to one really good thing that they can tie hopes to. And so that was very transformative to me. I realized very quickly that doing a low-income or a tuition-free private school was probably not the scalable solution to the nation's problems, but at the same time really came to appreciate that education was something that was really transformative and important, and that helped me move.
Great, thanks, John. Jay, I'm going to come to you. So you thought you were down there, so you go last. I know you were waiting, but I'm going to keep you all on your toes. Jay, the concept of B Corporation. How about explaining what it is, and then how is it you got so passionate about this idea?
Right. So one way to think about a B Corp is it's like LEED, but for business. So think of a certification, but looking at the whole enterprise, not just the building that it's in or the product that it produces. And the excitement around B Corp came from as I was getting ready to transition from AN1, from my first career to the next career. I got increasingly inspired by this growing movement of social entrepreneurs around the world, many of whom are here, and we've been meeting for the last couple days. And what occurred to me and what I was seeing out there was that we're at this very early stage of one of the most important movements of what I think will be our lifetimes, which is beginning a growing consensus among entrepreneurs, consumers, investors, and policymakers to look at the latent potential to use market forces to solve social and environmental problems. And that's the big trend, whether it's about conscious consumption or social investing, from microfinance to clean tech and everything in between. But what we were lacking was basic market infrastructure that exists in consumer and capital markets today for traditional markets, but for this emerging marketplace. Our institutions hadn't evolved to catch up with the energy of the entrepreneurs. And so, we know S Corps and C Corps and LLCs are traditional corporate structures in the US, and we needed a new corporate form that would meet the needs of these new entrepreneurs that could create a new economy. And so C and S were taken, so we had 24 other letters to choose from. And so we chose B because these companies create benefit for all their stakeholders, not just their shareholders.
And you also like the Gandhi quote, right?
And the Gandhi quote, it depends in what audience. So this is one of those difficult things. We had a fun conversation in our session yesterday about do we lead with interest-based leadership or values-based leadership. So in an interest-based crowd, I would talk about benefits for all stakeholders. In a values-based crowd, I might talk about wanting to be the change that we seek in the world. And so depending upon which side of that continuum you find yourself at this moment, you can take either as the inspiration for where the B came from. And my dad would say, well, why not an A Corp, of course.
That's next. Delhi. So you're originally from Nigeria. You spent a long time in the States, worked for This Day. Your family's living right now.
Newsday.
Excuse me? Newsday, sorry, forgive me. Your family now in South Africa. Why the decision to go back to Nigeria, such a difficult place, to do what you're doing, which is to create a newspaper? You could even see the way it looked up on the screen. This is a newspaper unlike anything else in that market, simply looking at it. But then, of course, you look at the content. This is an in-your-face newspaper that is not shying away from saying the difficult things about what's going on in Nigeria. We could see it from the very headlines. Why? Why'd you do it?
Well, I mean, it's quite obvious to everyone, especially the 150 million people who live there, that the country was persistently underperforming, that it was in fact failing, and that many, many millions of people could not easily realize their full potential in such an environment. Now, there are many people who approach the problem from different angles, but the only thing I know how to do is journalism. I have never tried to do anything else, and I figured if I was going to be able to contribute something, it would have to be in an area where I had a certain level of skill, which is constantly exaggerated, but which possibly is sufficient to do something that might move the needle along a little bit. The problem with it, of course, is that I'm now too old for this kind of thing. So we're in a race, really, basically trying to build up a core of much younger people who can push this thing forward. Once you pass 50 years old, you begin to think of a number of other things. But more directly to your question, the reason I went back is, one day you look up on the wall at the clock, and it's either you do it now or you never do it. So I decided to leave New York and begin to make my way back. It also happens to be just about the time that Isaac came to my house in Johannesburg and interested me in this whole Aspen thing. And so that was the final push to commit to something that was bound to be very difficult, if not impossible. And I have to confess that if I knew how difficult it would be, I may never have started. So this is a good lesson for all of you out there who are trying to attempt something significant, particularly what I do, which basically makes us more and more enemies every day. So I think at some point they're going to tell me you're not going to eat lunch in this town again. But here we are.
I will say this is serious stuff, so we can smile and laugh about it, but I know you've been through a very difficult time in Nigeria, and so it's not just people whispering in your ear, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. I've sat with Delhi as he's even received emails that have been quite threatening, and I know you're in a very, very difficult environment. One of my questions was going to be, what do you wish you'd known before you went into it? We'll come to that. You've almost answered that one. And let me come to you. What's motivated you to do what you're doing with Link?
I mean, aside from Isaac, who can be very persuasive.
Yeah, we know all the answers of Isaac for this, yes.
But I think for me, and I would also stay with the Gandhi quote, the reality of the South African situation, and there's a quote by Gandhi who says, how society treats its children is a reflection on that society. And we currently have 21% of the kids in South Africa are orphans. And that's and that translates about 4 million kids. And that's really a legacy we were hearing last night of our government's stance on HIV and AIDS. And this impact is being felt today, and it's being felt today by that large number of vulnerable children, and it's being felt today by the grandmothers who left to look after them. And for me, you can't really go anywhere in South Africa without seeing this. It's there. And I'd always worked in education, and education is absolutely critical, and I still do work in education. But how can you actually educate someone who is coming to school with no parental support? We have about, between 250,000 and 450,000 kids who live in homes without any adult supervision. How do they actually come to school? We have 70% of our kids are living in poverty. There is about between 400 and 500,000 kids sexually abused every year, and that's only they estimate that only 1 in 9 report that. And yet we expect any kind of performance in an education system. So for me, I am very passionate being a mother, but also just generally about issues relating to children. And I think my skill is hopefully in bringing people together to do something collectively. Hence, that's the path that I chose. But it was really a feeling that something needed to be done, and something long term, because this problem has been getting worse. And although a lot is being done to solve it, nothing is actually making it any better. So that was also a big motivator for me, and to try and do something long term, not just to fix. Which is absolutely critical, but not just to fix some things for a couple of kids today.
Great. And of course, you've been frustrated that there's so many organizations focused on this, and yet they're not coordinating, they're not talking to one another. And of course, what you're bringing to the field is bringing them together, convening them, so that hopefully they can focus their efforts and be more efficient in designing this. Tim, I'm going to come to you. You're a product of the Denver City Schools, right? Tell us about what brought you to create the Denver Scholarship Fund.
Yeah, I did go to Denver Public Schools, and I went to one of the non-elite schools. And fortunately, I had good grades, and I got into school here in Colorado and did okay. And when I came back to Denver, I had the opportunity to help out the non-elite. It's a true tragedy here in the U.S. that the top 20% of the kids in the country, whether that's financial or academic gifted kids, they're taken care of many times over scholarships. But the other 80% get left behind, and Denver's no different. In fact, is as bad as any big city in the country. And through a combination of hard work and bizarre circumstance, I end up with some money that I just felt that I've got this incredible opportunity to help out kids who were like me. And over the last 30 or 40 years since I got out of school, has been quite a while, it's only gotten worse in this country. Every year, college costs go up more and more. They're skyrocketing here in Colorado. They're skyrocketing in California. They're skyrocketing in the country. And every time they skyrocket, more and more kids get left behind. So what do we do about the non-elite, the other 80%? And that's simply what we do, is we help out the bottom 80%. But these kids are amazing. You just give them a little crack in the door, a little opportunity, and they'll blow the lid off. And what's really, I'm so proud of our kids that we help. If you looked at on paper, our kids have lower GPAs. They don't have the SAT scores. They're 80% first-generation college goers, 75%, actually 85% minorities. You would not guess that they would succeed, but our kids are actually outperforming their peers in college, just because what you can't measure is the kids' desires, and our kids have tremendous desires.
How many kids have you been able to provide scholarships to so far?
I think we're fifth year now, and I think we're up to over 3,000 kids, and so it's but we want to trying to figure out a way to expand that throughout the state now. And 3,000 kids is a lot, but there's many more thousands that are getting left behind, and not just Colorado. So it's a start, but man, there's a lot of work to do.
Which leads me to my next question, which is, what does success look like for each of you? When will you feel that your project has succeeded? Jay?
Well, I think we think about success in generational terms. There are milestones along the way. Today actually was a nice milestone where the 5th governor passed B Corp legislation and signed it today. And so there'll be milestones along the way of going from 5 to 50 states.
What does that mean that they signed that legislation?
So that means that there are now 5 states that have officially recognized B Corps as a distinct legal entity. And that makes it easier for the next generation of social entrepreneurs and investors to incorporate and build businesses that have the dual purpose of making money and making a difference, and they have a corporate structure that meets those specific needs. There are now well over 400 certified B Corps, from small sustainable ag companies to big industrial manufacturers, and there'll be milestones as that crosses 1,000 and 10, et cetera. But what we and our impact investing work, we're launching our ratings and analytics platform, Gears, on Monday. Actually, we'll be rating the first 25 Gears Pioneer Impact Investment Funds and the first couple hundred Gears rated companies around the world, everywhere from Afghanistan to Zambia and Nicaragua to Nairobi. And so there'll be plenty of metrics and milestones along the way. But what we really think what we're about is something it's a generation. It's when my kids are talking with their kids as they think about what kinds of jobs they can go after. And so in a generation, what we see is that we're witnessing the birth of a whole new sector of the economy that marries the power of business with the purpose of civil society. And all the different businesses that are being created through projects and through vocations in this room are the beginnings of that emerging marketplace. And 50 years ago, we didn't talk about the nonprofit sector as a thing. We talked about public and private. And 50 years from now, I'll leave it to others to name that new sector of the economy. But that new sector of the economy is going to be comprised of actual companies that you can work for, invest in, buy from. And those are going to be called B Corps, because they create benefit for everybody, not just for the investors that provided the capital. And so when we think about success, what success looks like is better choices for our kids and our grandkids about the kinds of places they can bring their whole selves to work, better choices for making purchases from companies that reflect our values and create high-quality jobs and improve the quality of life in their local communities, and that provide us a way to use our capital for a higher purpose than just amassing private wealth. But we can use our capital to have tremendous social impact, and we'll be able to measure that impact, and not just talk about being a top quartile fund manager around my returns, but a top quartile fund manager in terms of my impact. And that helps reframe what success in business looks like. And I think at the biggest level, that's what B-Lab is doing, is helping reframe what it means to be successful in business.
Terrific. Thank you. Dele, what's success look like for Next?
First, when I'm no longer material to the enterprise, I think the level of key man risk is a bit still too high. But more importantly, when we are no longer the only ones in the place that are doing the kind of work that we do, I find that the most difficult thing to accept, because it seems so obvious that when an injustice is being done, that everybody would rise to the occasion. But this has proved completely false, at least so far. Often we even offer to share documents with other publishers when we are cracking high-level cases of corruption. Most recently, of course, with the Minister of Petroleum Resources in our country. And as you go into the oil sector and begin to peel off all the layers, you enter the real heart of darkness. And many people shy away from that because it's obviously very dangerous. What you're doing denies people billions of dollars. So we would like not to be the only ones doing it, because it's easy to isolate you and perhaps to fight back. Hopefully we'll encourage the others and get to a point where others join us. I hope someday you'll join us, that kind of thing. So that would be success for me. When I fade off from the scene and Next is carrying on, as well as when all the other papers join us.
John, success for Rocket Ship?
Yeah. Success for Rocket Ship, our mission is to eliminate the achievement gap in the entire country, so it's not exactly a small goal, which probably means that, may take slightly longer than my useful life, but we're going to try to do it in our lifetimes. But a couple of themes that people have hit on here I think are really important to me as well. One is kind of the whole built to last concept. You know, you're a social entrepreneur trying to solve these enormous social problems. The idea that you're going to last 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, that's pretty unlikely. So, you know, a lot of what I spend my time worrying about is building the team, building the set of people that are going to take this over and kind of carry it forward, because it's not very useful to do something that's only useful while you're around. So I think that's one theme. And the other thing that I think is really important is changing the norm. So a lot of what we all do is direct action, you know, try to create schools where the students, the low-income students, are achieving higher than the high-income students around them. And that's great, but actually one of the kind of the intermediate milestones is for people to believe that that's actually possible and not an anomaly, right? So a lot of times, you know, if you poll Americans right now, 50% of people would say, well, actually, low-income families are not capable of achieving at the same level because the parents don't have the same educational status, they've got too many jobs, all these things. And you know, one of the things we're just trying to put to rest is, at some scale for Rocket Ship and the other people that are doing this, you have to say, you know what, that's just not true, that's more of a historical fact. So looking back in 20 or 30 years, you know, when I'm with my cane thinking about what I've accomplished, I'd love to imagine having my grandkids say to me, you know, that achievement gap thing, that was just a terrible point in history, wasn't it? You know, as opposed to that achievement gap thing, that's real and that's happening every day. So.
And success?
So success for me, I think, is at many levels. The one level is just to learn how to do things differently. We've had these problems of education, we've had all the problems for so long, and we keep on trying to solve them in the same way. So for me, the model that we're using in the vulnerable children sector has now been adopted and is being used in the education sector with an organization called Bridge. And that is really exciting for me, because Bridge is working collaboratively on how to spread successful practice. And it's really working, and government, unions, school stakeholders are all working collaboratively, so that there's a belief that we can actually solve something if we work together. So one level of that for me is a spread to other sectors. With regard to working, you know, I'd love to say that there wouldn't be any more orphans. I mean, that would really be success. But I think it's at many levels. The one is that we change the way that people in the children's sector work together in order to deliver more effectively and more sustainably. And so what we've already done is we have 100 leaders, the key government players, the key civil society players, the key donors, and they've already significantly shifted their leadership capacity. You can imagine what it's like where you have these kind of challenges and you've never had any training to deal with it. And we've tried to provide that support. And I think that, you know, for me, success will be, and I think it's already been indicated by our research, is when those in the positions of power feel that they can actually deliver. And the second thing is to actually have institutional structures that collaborate and coordinate our response. And through the work we're doing, there is now an institutional structure called the Child Care and Protection Forum, where all stakeholders work together to deliver on the Children's Act. And then for me, and there are many examples of impact we've had through collaboration, but the real thing is we've got everybody to work together trying to innovate on issues that have been there for the last 20 years. And that's where some of the exciting things are. So through the work we're doing, it's how do you really support child-headed households? And I think it's going to take some time to finish these processes. And success for me would be that they're finished. But we are pioneering a new way of funding child-headed households, which is coming into court precedence in the next 2 months. And that will mean a significant increase to the funding that goes to support child-headed households. We are shifting the way the children's sector is funded It's significantly underfunded, and through processes and innovations that we've been running, the idea is to change the way funding is requested, and we're hoping to raise a significantly more money into the process and have done research in that regard. We are short 15,000 social workers. We currently, through some of the collaborative testing we're doing, are testing a model that's around cluster foster care that doesn't need social workers, and that model is successful. And the really exciting thing for me, I always hesitate to do things that don't include the people most impacted by the problem, and we haven't had kids in our network. And 2 of the fellows are launching in November a link for children. So that will include youth leaders, and I'm really, really excited about that. So for me, it's just really bedding that all down and then taking this as a model for solving what really seem intractable problems into other sectors. That will be success for me.
Terrific. Thank you. Tim, I'm interested in how you think about success, because I would bet it's beyond just delivering the scholarships. You're interested in the outcomes of the kids and so on. Talk more about that.
Yeah, I think one of the smartest things our staff and our board did at the beginning is we defined our success, at least our little local project, as not just sending kids to school, but graduating from college. So part of our program is a retention program. And I think it's no accident that our kids are outperforming their peers, is that we don't just dump them on the front door of the college and leave them. We actually help nurture them through college. It's and listen to everybody here talk about success. There's a little satisfaction. There is satisfaction helping these few thousand kids go, but then you think about worldwide the problems, and what we're doing is just a tiny drop in the bucket. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny drop in the bucket, and it's overwhelming when in Africa you probably have a 1 in a 10,000 chance of going to college. Yeah, America, we should be doing a lot better, but it's a real tough problem worldwide, and I don't think we'll ever really succeed to my satisfaction. The overall thing, it's just a daunting project. So
I would guess it's one of the reasons all of you are so successful is that you're never going to be satisfied with whatever you've achieved. You're going to keep going, and I think that's the case. Let me ask each of you, what's the number one, looking at having implemented your project, figuring out what you're passionate about is really difficult for anybody, and then launching a project, taking it to a level where it's been running for several years, you've overcome great hurdles already, and that's great. When you look back, what do you think the number one leadership lesson you take away from getting your projects up and running? John?
Well, for me, probably the biggest leadership lesson was related to moving from the for-profit to the nonprofit world, and especially from high-tech startups to kind of social enterprise. And I always thought that, when I was running my first company, that I must be doing a good job, because look at all the people who were joining us and how great they were and how excited they were. And I guess I incorporated into my thinking the fact that we were going to go public and everybody was going to make a lot of money, but it was really about my leadership. It turns out that's also a motivator for people, that they might make a few dollars. So, when you're on the nonprofit side, you really leadership is all about people wanting to believe in the mission and the vision that the organization has enough really to make personal sacrifices, and when you're talking about schools organization like ours, I mean, there's just nothing like the sacrifices that teachers make and principals make every day for the good of kids, and for that to work, they really have to feel that what they're doing is really well aligned with what the organization wants to achieve, and they have to believe in that bigger vision. So it's just a much, much more difficult leadership challenge when you don't kind of have the financial incentives on the side. So I think my lesson was really strip away all the other stuff, and then can you actually build the structure where people can feel bought into that mission in a way that's very personal for them.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I think the challenge is first and foremost was getting people in Denver to realize that there is a problem. Second of all is getting people to believe that these kids in the bottom 80% really do want to go to college and could succeed in school. And I think we've done a pretty good job of those two things, but now the big part is the fundraising. It just takes an enormous amount of time to raise the funds. It's a big challenge to raise the money to make this happen. So those are the three things we've had to overcome.
Dylan?
I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges that I have faced and I've had to kind of abide by is in showing personal example. We require a lot of the people who come to work for us. They're not allowed to be involved in any ethically questionable conduct at any time. They're supposed to work to very high and demanding standards. And what I find is because of the sort of prominent position that one then is thrust into in society and all the attendant temptations that accompany it in a place like that, you have to be exceptionally strong within yourself to resist all of these temptations, and also to sacrifice personally a lot to keep our people motivated and to keep them going, because it's not that easy to maintain something where you operate in a very hostile environment where everybody's sort of wishing we would die and go away. So the way that I conduct myself, I think, has been the most important thing that I have had to handle there.
Anne, how about you?
The one lesson is the difficult question. I think that part of it has been to learn humility. Because I come out of a corporate background, the idea of measurement for me is quite concrete, and impact is quite concrete. And I've had to learn to really listen to the fellowships in the sector that we serve, and really understand that just the fact that people are together and talking, what comes out of that is actually quite magical and is not always possible to capture. And to be able to fight that battle on their behalf with the rest of the world, funders in particular, who want things in a particular way, and to just realize, just observe the incredible value and appreciation from people who are, just doing an impossible job. And I've just learned so much from the people in the sector. In terms of what they valued out of the fellowship. So really being, you asked what my idea of success was. It's quite different to what a lot of the people in the fellowship's idea, and it's just being open to that and figuring out how to balance that.
Thanks. Jay?
From my perspective, leadership is really about fellowship. And what I mean by that is leadership is a team sport. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you'll move your idea forward. And so that was the case for me in the private sector with AM1, and that's been the case in spades at B-Lab. The original kernel of an idea has changed 100 times during my fellowship, post-fellowship, and as my fellowship of the Infinite Henry Clown class became a fellowship with Crown Fellows through multiple classes, and with Kali Fellows, and with Ali Fellows, and with Kato Fellows, and just recognizing that you just keep on expanding in concentric circles, folks that might share like the vision of where you're headed, and then remain, as Anne was saying, completely open to all the different routes up that mountain. And so the humility that Anne talked about, I think, is a central part of being recognizing that you're just a team member. You're not a leader, that the leadership will come from wherever the good idea is, and that your job is to help be a channel through which that good idea gets to turn from an idea into action. And so for me, the greatest challenge of leadership is remembering that like a mantra every day, that it's about the fellowship, it's about the fellowship, it's about the fellowship. And then the first rule of being a good fellow is the same as being a good friend, which is listen more, talk less.
You may have just heard Deli mumble. That's a tough one for me. Yeah. But Jay, you really took me to the last thing I wanted to ask you all, which was we're here with 210 fellows out of our 1,340 fellows in the world. Each of you are part of either a Henry Crown Fellowship program class or one of our Africa Leadership classes. How has the fellowship helped you in your success in your projects? Anne?
Well, it's helped me enormously because, I had never worked in the children's sector in South Africa. So, I went to fellows in the Ali network that had. Bongi was up here last night. One of my first conversations was with Bongi, who was working in the Deputy President's office. So the fellowship group has helped me enormously in terms of the network. And I also went to the fellowship group in terms of funding. And I think, elements of it's so tough. It's just bizarrely difficult, and you have to persevere. And these kind of sessions motivate you to continue to do it. So I think the fellowship's been an integral part for me of doing the project.
John, how about you?
I would just say that I think that these fellowships and the Aspen give you the right to do something that all the people that you know around you aren't going to do, which is just tremendously difficult. I probably get a couple people a month that come to see me that have come from the tech world that are thinking about creating more meaning in their lives. And you just listen to these stories for how hard it is to break out of what you've already been extremely successful at into something that's very meaningful. And it's very, very hard. And I think that, when Keith Berwick and the masterminds behind the Crown Fellowship program were thinking about it, the idea that you would put kind of 20 people in a room that all kind of had slightly different perspectives on the world, I'm not sure if they understood that this is one of the effects, but one of the effects is that you realize that the little world you've lived in is not the whole world. It's just this thing that you've done, and there's actually great opportunity to do completely different things. And so for me, I think it's been very transformative because it's let me think that way. Which, if I was with most of my friends back in Silicon Valley, they would just say I was crazy. So it's useful that way, I think.
Kim, how about you?
I think the greatest benefit of the fellowship here is there's a lot of nuts here, and by that I mean it's very.
Is that nets or nuts?
It's very easy to do a small project, and I think most people are comfortable doing small projects. When we started our scholarship foundation, I think most people would have been satisfied if we said, well, let's take the 100 poorest or the 20 most gifted Hispanic students and give them scholarships, and to do something that's relatively big, to say, no, everybody in the city is eligible for it, and not only eligible, but we want them to take it. It's a big step, but when you have people like quite a few in this room are thinking big like that, you realize you can do it. And there's, of course, a lot of people here with much bigger projects than ours. I think we were probably voted in by accident, I think. But it is comforting to know that there are people who set their sights high and push each other to set our sights even higher.
Jay, how specifically have you used the network?
In 100 different ways. And so B-Lab wouldn't have started had I not been a Crown Fellow as a get-go. And that wouldn't have happened without my partner and best friend nominating me for the Crown Fellows program after he came out of it and said it was one of the most life-changing experiences he'd ever had. So the mere fact that I'm here and there was a container in which B Corps and all of that stuff could sort of germinate is a direct result of the Fellows program. Throughout the entire evolution of the idea, whether it was Andrew or any number of a dozen people that I see in the room today, challenging all the basic assumptions of what we were trying to do, and both sometimes enlarging the idea, sometimes narrowing the aperture on the lens, and at a very specific level, introducing us to funders, helping us with key hires, helping us refine the standards that we use for certification or for the investment ratings, helping introduce us to elected officials that are interested in what we're doing to help us pass legislation. So it's sort of like, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Like it goes on and on. Like the network has been phenomenal at very strategic levels, at operational levels, and then of course at just a personal level. There's tremendous joy I get and renewal I get every time I'm in a room with just the fellows from my class. And then, as I said, like as I view like the larger family of fellows, it also is re-energizing to realize that there's this huge wave of talent and energy that you're a part of. And so in all of those ways, the fellowship has been fundamental to whatever traction we've gotten so far.
Thank you, Jay. Dele, I'm going to give you the last word. How about you and the Aspen Global Leadership Network? How's it helped you?
Well, I like to stand off a lot, especially when I'm frustrated and want to chuck the whole thing and get out of Dodge. And a lot of the fellows, especially those who are closest to me, have sort of pushed me back in there and offered words of encouragement. And we've gone through many blind alleys as well, and people come up with ideas about how you could refine and retool and redirect your energies and your resources. I think I was telling some of the fellows that it was one of those mercy missions that Carl Flowers came on to Lagos last year, a couple of weeks before he passed away, one of the fellows from my class and a close friend. And so this is what the fellowship does for you. It allows you to manage your frustrations. It allows you to celebrate the little successes you have. And it provides an incredible support system, as well as in very practical ways, that there are always people around who are a bit brighter than you, a bit more knowledgeable than you, and who know how to run complex and changing institutions, and you can turn to them for advice. I have been actually clearly humbled by this whole fellowship thing, because for most stages of my life, I've tended to be perhaps one of the few brightest people in the room. And for the first time, this is no longer the case, you bastards. So I derive a lot of sustenance from this, emotionally, psychologically. And it gives me confidence that even when things appear very bleak and frustrating, there are people out there that you respect and love enough, and you don't want to disappoint them. So thank you to all of you.
So, Anne, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for creating this wonderful prize. I think you can see how many people it's motivating. And John, Dele, Anne, Tim, Jay, thank you for acting too. Thank you.